My name is Sophia, and I'm 29 years old. As an event coordinator who specializes in weddings, I never imagined those words would come from my own mother's mouth regarding my sister Madison's big day. The room went silent as my family stared at me, waiting for my reaction to being told I wasn't welcome at my only sister's wedding. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. Before I share how my own family broke my heart, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our storytelling family. Growing up, Madison and I were inseparable despite our 4-year age gap. She was my shadow, following me everywhere with wide, admiring eyes. I took my role as big sister seriously, braiding her hair before school, defending her against neighborhood bullies, and letting her borrow my clothes even when our mother Diana said I shouldn't. Madison was gentle and artistic where I was outspoken and practical. She painted beautiful watercolors. I organized neighborhood talent shows. Different as we were, we complemented each other perfectly. "You're the only one who gets me," Madison would whisper during our late-night talks, her voice carrying across the darkness between our twin beds. Those words meant everything to me. Our mother Diana ran our household with military precision and impossibly high standards. Nothing less than excellence was acceptable, and even excellence often received only a tight nod of acknowledgement. She was particularly hard on me as the firstborn, expecting me to set an example in everything from academics to appearance. "Sophia, fix your posture. No one respects a woman who slouches." She'd snap across the dinner table while my father Thomas quietly focused on his meal. Dad was kind but conflict-averse. Whenever tension rose between Mom and me, he'd suddenly remember yard work or emails that needed attention. His favorite phrase became, "Listen to your mother, Sophia." Over time, I realized his silence was its own form of betrayal. It became obvious early on that Madison was Diana's favorite. My sister's artistic talents were showcased and celebrated, her paintings framed throughout our home while my academic awards gathered dust in a drawer. When Madison won a regional art competition in high school, Mom threw an elaborate party. When I was accepted to my dream college with a partial scholarship, Mom merely commented, "Well, I suppose that's better than nothing." My decision to pursue event coordination rather than law or medicine like my parents wanted was met with open disapproval. "Planning parties? That's hardly a respectable career, Sophia," my mother scoffed when I shared my career plans. "You're throwing away your potential." Despite their lack of support, I built a successful career at Elegant Occasions, one of the most prestigious event planning companies in our city. I worked my way up from assistant to lead coordinator within 4 years, specializing in luxury weddings that often appeared in bridal magazines. The irony wasn't lost on me that I created perfect wedding days for strangers while being told I wasn't welcome at my own sister's. Madison met Ryan 3 years ago at a charity gala I had organized. He was handsome, successful, and from a well-connected family that owned several real estate developments across the state. When Ryan decided to propose, he actually called me first for help planning the perfect moment. I suggested his family's lakeside property at sunset, helped arrange for a photographer to capture the moment, and even connected him with a string quartet I often worked with. Madison said yes, of course. Surrounded by candles and rose petals, I had helped Ryan select. When Madison called me immediately after, her voice bubbling with joy, I felt genuinely happy for my sister. He had musicians playing our song, Soph. And the setup was so beautiful. You should have seen it. I helped him plan it, I admitted, smiling through my tears of happiness. "You did? Oh my God, that makes it even more special." That was the last time I felt truly connected to my sister. The trouble began almost immediately after the engagement announcement. Our family dinner to celebrate should have been joyous, but I noticed how Mom kept directing the conversation away from my contributions to the proposal. "Ryan is so thoughtful to have planned such a romantic proposal," she gushed, deliberately ignoring my earlier revelation about helping him. Over the following weeks, I offered to help with wedding planning, given my professional experience. "That's sweet, but we've got it handled," Madison replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "Mom's already found a planner she loves." I could at least help you research venues, I suggested. I have relationships with many of them and might be able to get you a discount. Mom says mixing business and family can cause problems, Madison said, repeating words that clearly weren't her own. Each time I offered assistance, I was politely but firmly shut out. Mom had taken complete control of the planning process, and Madison, always eager to please our mother, followed her lead. I tried not to take it personally, telling myself that many brides want control over their special day. But when my professional expertise was repeatedly dismissed in favor of Diana's Pinterest boards, the rejection stung deeply. I'm just trying to give Madison the wedding she deserves, Mom said defensively when I questioned her. Your ideas are fine for your clients, but this is different. I swallowed my hurt and stepped back, hoping that once the initial excitement settled, I would be included in some way. After all, I was still Madison's only sister. 6 months before the wedding, I was scrolling through Instagram when my heart dropped. There on my screen was Madison, surrounded by my mother, our aunts, and 2 of her bridesmaids, all holding champagne flutes inside our city's most exclusive bridal boutique. The caption read, "Said yes to the dress with my favorite women." #BrideTribe. I stared at the image until my vision blurred with tears. The dress shopping trip, one of the most significant pre-wedding moments, and I hadn't even known it was happening. I had always imagined being by Madison's side for this milestone, offering my honest opinion and sharing in her joy. That evening, I called Madison, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw your post about finding your dress," I said. "It looked like a fun day." A pause. "Oh yeah. It was really last minute. Mom arranged it." "Last minute? But you had your bridesmaids there." Another pause. "It was just a preliminary look, honestly. We were in the area after lunch, and Mom suggested we stop in. I didn't even buy anything yet." The very next day, Madison posted photos of her saying yes to the dress, with the boutique's branded sign and shopping bags clearly visible in the pictures. This pattern continued over the following months. I'd learn about cake tastings, venue tours, and floral selections through social media or mutual friends. My texts to Madison became increasingly unanswered or received brief replies hours later. Our weekly sister dinners, a tradition we'd maintained even after moving to separate apartments, were repeatedly rescheduled and eventually stopped altogether. "Sorry, just swamped with wedding stuff and work," became her standard response. I tried reaching out in other ways, sending her articles about honeymoon destinations she might like, dropping off her favorite coffee during her lunch break, anything to maintain our connection. Each gesture was met with decreasing enthusiasm. During one rare phone conversation, Madison mentioned a problem with her chosen photographer. "I actually know someone who might be available," I offered. "The photos from the Cooper wedding I did last month were stunning." "Mom's already found someone new," she replied quickly. "Thanks, though." It hurt to be so deliberately excluded, but I told myself that wedding planning is stressful and Madison was simply overwhelmed. Perhaps once the big decisions were made, things would return to normal between us. 3 months before the wedding, I received a formal invitation to a family dinner at my parents' house. The card was in my mother's elegant handwriting, requesting my presence for an important family discussion regarding Madison's wedding. A flutter of hope rose in my chest. Maybe this was finally my invitation to participate in some meaningful way. I spent extra time getting ready that evening, selecting a dress that Madison had once complimented, styling my hair the way our mother preferred, and bringing an expensive bottle of champagne as a gift. On the drive over, I rehearsed supportive and enthusiastic responses to whatever wedding task they might finally include me in. The dinner began pleasantly enough, with my father grilling steaks and my mother serving her famous roasted potatoes. Madison and Ryan held hands across the table, looking very much in love. The conversation flowed around wedding details, the final menu selections, the upgraded linens, the decision to add a photo booth during the reception. I smiled and nodded, waiting for my opening to contribute or for someone to explain why I had been specifically invited tonight. Then, as my mother served coffee and her signature lemon tart, she cleared her throat and looked directly at me. "Sophia, we've asked you here to discuss something important." After much consideration, we all agreed, "You're not welcome at the wedding." The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked at each face around the table, waiting for someone to laugh, to tell me it was a terrible joke. My father studied his dessert. Ryan looked uncomfortable but remained silent. Madison stared at her hands. "What?" I finally managed. "What are you talking about?" "It's for the best," my mother continued calmly, as if discussing a minor change in seating arrangements. "Madison deserves a perfect day without tension or drama." "What tension? What drama?" My voice cracked. "Madison, what is this about?" My sister finally looked up, her expression a mixture of guilt and resolution. "It's just, we think it might be better this way." "Better how?" "I'm your sister. I've been planning weddings for years. I want to support you." "That's exactly the problem," my mother interjected. "You're clearly jealous of Madison's happiness. Your attempts to insert yourself into the planning process have caused your sister unnecessary stress." "Jealous?" I repeated, the accusation so absurd I almost laughed. "I helped Ryan plan the proposal. I've been trying to support Madison however I can." "We've all noticed your behavior," Mom continued. "The competitive comments, the criticism of our choices, the constant reminders of your professional experience." I looked desperately at Madison. "Is that how you feel? That I've been competitive and critical?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "You do always have to point out how things could be done better or differently." I was trying to help, to share my knowledge. "See? This is exactly the kind of dramatic reaction we wanted to avoid on the wedding day," my mother said with a satisfied nod, as if my hurt and confusion proved her point. "Dad." I turned to my father, hoping for some support or at least an explanation. He finally looked up, his expression pained but resigned. "Your mother and sister think it's for the best, Sophia. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." In that moment, I realized I was completely alone in a room full of my family. Whatever narrative my mother had crafted about me had been accepted by everyone, including my sister, who once said I was the only one who truly understood her. "I don't understand what I did wrong," I whispered, tears now flowing freely. "Madison, please." "It's decided," my mother stated firmly. "We expect you to respect Madison's wishes for her special day." I stood on shaky legs, grabbed my purse, and walked out without another word, leaving the untouched champagne behind. The drive home from my parents' house remains a blur in my memory. Tears obscured my visions so badly that I had to pull over twice, once nearly hitting a guardrail. I remember calling my best friend Natalie from a gas station parking lot, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. "They don't want me at the wedding," I sobbed when she answered. "My own sister doesn't want me there."
"What?"
"That's impossible," Natalie replied, her voice sharp with disbelief. "What exactly happened, Soph?" I recounted the dinner conversation through hiccuping sobs, each word making the reality more painful. Natalie listened, occasionally murmuring reassurances, but I could hear the shock in her voice. "I'm coming over," she said finally. "Don't be alone right now." By the time Natalie arrived at my apartment with ice cream and wine, the shock had transformed into a physical pain. My chest felt tight, like my ribs were slowly crushing my lungs. My temples throbbed. Even my skin hurt, as if the betrayal had manifested as a full-body bruise. "I just don't understand," I kept repeating as we sat on my couch. "What did I do that was so terrible?" Natalie had known our family for years and had witnessed the dynamics firsthand. "This has your mother written all over it," she said firmly. "Madison would never come up with this on her own." "But she agreed with it," I countered. "You should have seen her face. She couldn't even look at me." The next morning, after a nearly sleepless night, I tried calling Madison. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice cracking despite my attempts to sound calm. "Madison, it's me. Please call back. I need to understand what happened. Whatever I did, I want to fix it. I love you." No response came that day, or the next. By the third day, I wrote a letter, pouring my heart onto the pages, recounting our childhood memories, expressing my confusion and hurt, and begging for a conversation. I drove to her apartment and slipped it under her door. 2 days later, I received a text. "I got your letter. I think we need space right now. The wedding is stressful enough without adding more drama." More drama. The same phrase my mother had used. I could almost hear Diana's voice dictating the message. I threw myself into work, hoping that planning other people's perfect days would distract from the implosion of my personal life. My boss, Lauren, noticed the change immediately. "You're not yourself," she commented after I spaced out during a client meeting. "Is everything okay?"
"Fine, elite."
"Just tired." But I wasn't fine. During a consultation with sisters who were planning a double wedding, one of them mentioned how special it was to share the experience with her sister. I excused myself and had a full-blown panic attack in the bathroom, sliding down the wall as sobs racked my body and my lungs refused to fill with air. Lauren found me there 20 minutes later. "Take some time off," she insisted, helping me to my feet. "Whatever's happening, you need space to deal with it." "I can't," I protested. "Work is all I have right now." Lauren's expression softened. "That's exactly why you need a break. This isn't sustainable, Sophia." I reluctantly agreed to take a week off, but being alone in my apartment only made things worse. I replayed every interaction with Madison and my parents over the past months, searching for the moment where things went irreparably wrong. Had I been too pushy? Too opinionated? Had my professional pride come across as criticism? Friends invited me out, but I declined. How could I explain what had happened without sounding like the villain my family apparently thought I was? I stopped answering texts. I ordered delivery instead of grocery shopping to avoid running into anyone I knew. Netflix auto-played episode after episode of shows I barely registered as I stared blankly at the screen. Sleep became elusive. When I did manage to drift off, I dreamed of empty churches and locked doors, of running down endless hallways trying to reach a ceremony I could hear but never find. I'd wake up with tears on my pillow, the rejection fresh all over again. After 5 days of this isolation, Natalie used her emergency key to my apartment. She found me unwashed, surrounded by takeout containers, wearing the same pajamas for the 3rd day in a row. "This ends now," she announced, pulling open my curtains to let in the afternoon sunlight. "Shower.
Now."
"I'm cleaning this place up, and then we're talking." Too exhausted to argue, I complied. The hot water felt foreign on my skin after days of neglect. When I emerged, Natalie had cleared the trash, changed my bedding, and made tea. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to my freshly tidied couch. "We need to talk about what's really happening here." "What do you mean?" "I mean, this isn't about you causing drama or being jealous of Madison. This is about your mother's toxic control issues and how she's manipulated your relationship with your sister for years." "But Madison has been under your mother's influence her entire life," Natalie interrupted. "You were always the one who pushed back, who questioned Diana's authority. Madison never learned how to do that." As Natalie spoke, describing patterns I'd normalized for so long, something shifted in my perspective. The way my mother had always compared us, subtly encouraging competition. How she'd praise Madison to me and then criticize her when Madison wasn't present. The times she'd accidentally schedule something important for Madison during events that mattered to me. "Your mother has always been threatened by your relationship with Madison," Natalie continued. "And now that Madison is getting married, Diana's using it as the perfect opportunity to drive the final wedge between you." The realization didn't immediately ease the pain, but it provided a framework that made more sense than the idea that I'd somehow become a villain in my sister's life. "So what do I do?" I asked, feeling the first spark of something other than despair. "First, you take care of yourself," Natalie said firmly. "Eat real food. Sleep. Exercise. And stop isolating yourself. Then, when you're stronger, we figure out if there's a way to reach Madison directly, without Diana's interference." It was the first glimmer of a plan, the first moment I'd felt anything but helpless since that devastating dinner. 2 weeks after my conversation with Natalie, I was beginning to function again. I'd returned to work, started jogging in the mornings, and even attended a movie night at another friend's house. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had dulled enough that I could go hours without thinking about the wedding that was now just 6 weeks away. One Tuesday morning, I stopped at my favorite coffee shop before work. As I waited for my order, I heard someone call my name. Turning, I found myself face to face with Jack, Ryan's best friend and best man. Sophia. "Hey, how are you?" he asked, his friendly smile faltering slightly at my evident discomfort. "I'm fine," I replied automatically.
How are you?
"Must be busy with all the wedding prep." "Yeah, bachelor party planning is no joke," he laughed. "Ryan's pretty low maintenance, but I want to make it special, you know?" We chatted awkwardly for a moment before Jack's expression turned serious. "Look, I wanted to say I'm sorry about your decision. Ryan was really bummed when he heard you weren't coming to the wedding." I froze. "My decision?" Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, about not attending. Ryan said Madison was pretty upset when you told her you didn't want to be there." The room seemed to tilt. "Jack, that's not what happened. They told me I wasn't welcome." His eyebrows shot up.
What?
"No, that's not." He pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. "Here, look at this text from Ryan a couple months ago." The message read, "Madison's really hurt that Sophia doesn't want to come to the wedding. Says she's too busy with her own clients and it would be awkward, given everything. Diana's comforting her, but man, family stuff is complicated." My hand shook as I read the words. This is a complete lie. They uninvited me at a family dinner. My mother literally said, "You're not welcome at the wedding," and Madison agreed. Jack's confusion appeared genuine. "That's not what they've been telling everyone. The story going around is that you declined to participate because you're jealous of Madison's relationship and couldn't stand not being the center of attention." The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too hot. "I need to sit down." Jack guided me to a table and brought over our orders. "There's more," he said hesitantly. "Ryan showed me some texts between him and Madison where she mentioned that you refused to help with wedding planning because it wasn't high-end enough for your professional standards." "That's absurd," I whispered. "I offered to help dozens of times. They shut me out at every turn." Jack looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Look, I've known you for 3 years now. This never sounded like you, but I figured maybe there was stuff I didn't know about. Can you show me more of those texts?" He hesitated, then nodded, scrolling through his phone again. "Ryan and I talk about everything. He's been confused about the sister drama since it started." For the next 20 minutes, Jack showed me messages that painted a completely different picture of the past few months. According to these conversations, I had belittled Madison's choices, refused to participate in wedding activities because they were beneath me, and finally declared I wanted nothing to do with the tacky celebration. "None of this is true," I said, my voice stronger now, fueled by indignation. "I can show you my text to Madison, begging to be included." As we compared timelines and messages, a clear pattern emerged. Every time I had reached out to Madison, she'd report to Ryan and presumably our mother, a completely fabricated negative interaction. The timeline of my supposed refusal to attend the wedding coincided perfectly with the family dinner where I was told I wasn't welcome. "Someone's lying," Jack said finally. "And from what you're showing me, it doesn't seem like it's you." Armed with this new information, I reached out to Margaret, my mother's oldest friend who had always shown me kindness. We met for lunch the following day. "Margaret, I need to ask you something directly," I said after our food arrived. "What have you heard about me and Madison's wedding?" Margaret looked uncomfortable. "Honey, I don't want to get in the middle of family matters."
Please.
"I need to understand what's happening." She sighed. "Diana told the bridge club that you've been terribly jealous of Madison's happiness. That you refused to help with the wedding unless you could control everything, and ultimately said you wouldn't attend." "That's not true," I said firmly. "They told me I wasn't welcome." Margaret studied my face and seemed to make a decision. "I believe you. Your mother has always... well, she's always had a particular way of managing her relationships." "What do you mean?" "Diana likes to be the central figure, the one everyone depends on. When you girls were young, she would often tell me how worried she was that you were a bad influence on Madison, that you encouraged her to be too independent. As Margaret continued to speak, she revealed instances I'd never known about, how my mother had deliberately miscommunicated information between Madison and me even when we were teenagers, how she'd tell Madison that I was too busy to help with her homework when I'd never even been asked, how she'd convinced Madison that I thought her art was childish when I'd actually been its biggest champion. But why? I asked, struggling to understand such deliberate manipulation. Control, dear. Diana needs to be needed. You were always too self-sufficient for her liking. Madison gave her what she craved: dependency, admiration, compliance. The next revelation came when I contacted a wedding vendor friend to ask about industry gossip. She hesitated before admitting that my mother had called several local wedding professionals, including her. Diana said you might try to interfere with Madison's arrangements and asked us not to share any information with you. She implied you had a history of sabotaging your sister's happiness. Each new discovery revealed a more extensive campaign of manipulation than I'd imagined. My mother hadn't just excluded me from the wedding. She had systematically poisoned my relationship with Madison for years, escalating her efforts once the engagement made Madison more emotionally vulnerable. With the wedding now just 2 weeks away, I faced an impossible decision. Should I confront this web of lies, potentially disrupting Madison's wedding preparation? Or should I stay silent, allowing my mother's manipulation to permanently damage my relationship with my sister? As painful as the truth was, it offered something I hadn't felt in months: hope. If Madison's rejection wasn't based on her true feelings, but on our mother's manipulation, maybe our relationship wasn't beyond repair. After days of internal debate and several long conversations with Natalie, I decided I needed to speak with Madison alone, away from our mother's influence. I texted her, "Madison, I need to talk to you. Just us. It's important. Please." To my surprise, she responded within minutes. "Okay. When?" We arranged to meet at Jefferson Park, where we'd spent countless hours as children. It was neutral territory, filled with happy memories for both of us. I arrived early, choosing a bench near the duck pond where we used to feed birds with our grandfather. I brought evidence, screenshots of my text history with her, showing my repeated attempts to be involved, Jack's text exchanges with Ryan that contradicted the narrative I'd supposedly created, statements from vendors who confirmed my mother's interference. But I was determined to approach the conversation with compassion rather than accusation. Madison was a victim in this too, even if she'd participated in hurting me. When she arrived, Madison looked nervous. She sat at the opposite end of the bench, maintaining physical distance that mirrored our emotional separation. "Thanks for coming," I began. "What's so important?" Her tone was defensive, but I noticed the slight tremble in her voice. "I need to understand what happened between us. 2 months ago, Mom told me I wasn't welcome at your wedding, and you agreed. But I've recently learned that other people have been told I refuse to attend. Both can't be true." Madison's eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. "You've been difficult throughout this whole process, Sophia. Mom was just trying to protect me from more stress." "Difficult how?" "Every time I offered to help, I was shut down. Every suggestion was dismissed. I was excluded from dress shopping, cake tasting, everything traditional for a sister of the bride. Because you always have to take over. You and your professional opinions, making me feel like my choices aren't good enough." I took a deep breath. "Madison, when did I ever criticize your choices? Give me one specific example." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. After a moment, she said, "Mom told me you said my venue is tacky. I've never even seen your venue. I don't know where you're getting married because no one would tell me." Confusion flickered across her face. "But Mom said." Carefully, I pulled out my phone. "I want to show you something. These are all my texts to you over the past 6 months. Can you find a single message where I criticized anything about your wedding?" Madison reluctantly took the phone, scrolling through message after message of me offering help, sending encouraging notes, asking to be included. Her expression gradually shifted from defensiveness to confusion. Now look at these, I said, showing her screenshots Jack had sent me of Ryan's conversations. This is what Mom has been telling people about me. That I refused to attend your wedding because it wasn't high-end enough for me. As Madison read, tears began to form in her eyes. This doesn't make sense. Why would Mom lie about this? Gently, I shared what I'd learned from Margaret and others about our mother's history of coming between us. Madison listened, initially shaking her head in denial, then growing still as the pattern became clear. Remember in high school when you thought I didn't want to see your art showcase? I asked. Mom told me you only had one ticket and wanted to bring your friend Ashley instead. I found out months later it wasn't true. She told me you said art school was a waste of time and you were too embarrassed to come, Madison whispered. I was so hurt, and I was crushed thinking you didn't want me there. For the next hour, we compared notes, uncovering dozens of misunderstandings that had been deliberately engineered by our mother. With each revelation, Madison's defenses crumbled further. I can't believe I fell for this, she finally said, tears streaming down her face. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I should have talked to you directly. She's your mother, Madison. Of course you believed her. She's your mother too, Madison pointed out. And you didn't let her come between us until now. The conversation shifted as Madison began sharing her own struggles with the wedding planning. It's been a nightmare, she admitted. Mom has taken over everything. The venue I wanted was too rustic. The dress I loved was unflattering. Even the flowers I chose were wrong. Nothing I want matters. Why didn't you tell me? Mom said you were dealing with your own issues and I shouldn't burden you. Then she started saying you were jealous of my relationship with Ryan, that you'd always been competitive with me. When I defended you, she'd bring up examples of things you supposedly said about me. I reached for my sister's hand. Madison, none of that was true. I've only ever wanted you to be happy. I know that now, she said, squeezing my hand. God, what do I do? The wedding is in 12 days. What do you want to do? Madison looked torn. I want you there. You're my sister. But Mom will. This isn't about Mom, I said gently. This is about what you want for your wedding day. After more discussion, we decided to confront our parents together. Madison texted them to meet us at their house that evening, saying only that it concerned an important wedding matter. When we arrived together, my mother's face registered first surprise, then alarm at seeing us united. What's this about? She asked, her voice artificially light. We need to talk about the lies you've been telling, Madison said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. For the next 2 hours, we laid out everything we'd discovered. Dad looked increasingly horrified as the evidence mounted. Mom alternated between denial, I never said that, justification, I was only trying to protect you from her criticism, and attack. You've always been jealous of your sister, Sophia. Enough, Diana. My father finally interjected, his voice uncharacteristically firm. I've sat back too long while you manipulated our daughters against each other. This ends now. Mom's face hardened. You have no idea what I've done to give Madison the perfect wedding. Sophia would have ruined everything with her controlling attitude. The only one being controlling is you, Madison said. You've made this whole wedding about what you want, not what Ryan and I want. After everything I've done for you, you lied to me. Madison's voice rose. You made me believe terrible things about my own sister. You nearly destroyed our relationship. Mom turned to me, eyes cold. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You've turned her against me, just weeks before her wedding. No, Mom, I said calmly. Your own actions did that. The confrontation ended with no real resolution. Mom refused to acknowledge the harm she'd caused, instead retreating into wounded indignation. Dad apologized for his passivity, promising to address the situation with Mom privately. Madison and I left together, emotionally exhausted but reconnected. What happens now? I asked as we sat in my car outside our parents' house. Madison sighed. I don't know. The wedding plans are all set. Most of it is paid for. I can't cancel everything with less than 2 weeks to go. You don't have to cancel. Just decide what role you want me to have, if any. She looked at me, eyes still red from crying. I want my sister at my wedding. The rest we'll figure out as we go. The days following our confrontation passed in tense silence. Madison returned to her apartment to think. My father called once, sounding tired, to say he was working on my mother, but that she remained difficult. Mom didn't contact me at all. I prepared myself for either outcome, being included in the wedding at the last minute or remaining excluded. I even bought a dress suitable for a wedding guest, just in case, though I kept the tags on. 4 days before the wedding, my phone rang with Madison's ringtone. "Hi," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Can we talk?" We met at her apartment, where she greeted me with a long hug before pulling me inside. Spread across her living room were wedding details, seating charts, place cards, favor boxes half assembled. "I've been thinking nonstop about everything," she began. "About the wedding, about Mom, about us." She took a deep breath. "I'm going forward with the wedding as planned, but with some changes." "What kind of changes?" "First, you're not just invited. I want you to be part of it. Not officially in the bridal party since the dresses are already done, but helping me get ready, sitting in the front row, giving a toast if you're willing." Relief flooded through me. Of course I'm willing. I'd be honored. "Second, I've told Ryan everything. He's completely supportive and frankly, pretty angry at how you've been treated." "And Mom?" I asked cautiously. Madison's expression hardened slightly. "I told her my decision is final. You will be at my wedding. If she can't accept that, she's the one who can stay home." "You said that to Mom?" I couldn't hide my shock. "I did. Dad backed me up, surprisingly." She cried, accused me of betraying her, the whole dramatic scene. But eventually she agreed, probably because she cares more about appearances than anything else. She doesn't want to explain your absence to the guests any more than she wants to explain her own. "How do you feel about all this?" Madison's eyes filled with tears.
Confused. Angry. Sad.
"I wanted a perfect wedding day, but now I see that perfect doesn't mean what Mom convinced me it meant. Perfect means having the people I love there, including my sister." The night before the wedding, the traditional family dinner was predictably tense. Extended family members who had heard various versions of the sister drama watched curiously as Madison and I entered together. My mother maintained a cold civility toward me, speaking only when directly addressed. Several relatives commented on how nice it was that I could make it after all, clearly having been fed the narrative that I had initially refused to attend. Madison stayed close to my side throughout the evening, a physical demonstration of her choice. When our cousin asked about my absence from the bridal party, Madison smoothly explained, "We're doing things a little differently. Sophia will be with me all morning getting ready and has a special role in the ceremony." This was news to me, and apparently to our mother, whose head snapped up at this information. "What special role?" Diana asked sharply. "You'll see tomorrow," Madison replied with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. Later, as guests were leaving, Mom cornered me in the hallway. "I don't know what game you're playing," she hissed, "but this is Madison's day. Don't make it about you." "I never wanted to make it about me," I replied calmly. "I only ever wanted to be included in my sister's happiness. You're the one who tried to prevent that." She stalked away without responding, leaving me oddly empowered by the encounter. For perhaps the first time, I saw clearly that her behavior reflected her own insecurities, not my worth. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. As arranged, I arrived at the hotel suite where Madison was getting ready. The bridesmaids, who had heard only Diana's version of events, were initially cool toward me, but Madison's obvious joy at my presence gradually warmed the atmosphere. As the makeup artist worked on Madison's face, my sister reached for my hand. "I have something to ask you," she said, eyes meeting mine in the mirror. "It's last minute, and you can absolutely say no." "What is it?" "I want you to be my maid of honor." The room went silent. The official maid of honor, Madison's college roommate Brittany, looked startled. "But Brittany," I began. "Already agreed," Madison interrupted. "We talked about it yesterday." She'll still do the bachelorette speech at the reception, but I want you beside me during the ceremony. Won't that cause problems? The programs, the procession. Do you care about programs, or do you care about standing next to your sister as she gets married? Tears filled my eyes. I'd be honored.
But what about Mom?
Madison's expression hardened slightly. This is my wedding day, not hers. When my mother arrived an hour later and saw me being fitted with a hastily altered bridesmaid dress, her face went through a remarkable series of expressions: shock, anger, calculation, and finally a tight smile. What a surprise, she managed, her eyes darting to the other women in the room. Isn't it wonderful? Madison said brightly. Sophia's going to be my maid of honor after all. To her credit, my mother didn't make a scene. With so many witnesses, she had no choice but to nod and focus on adjusting Madison's veil. I caught my father's eye as he stopped by to check on preparations. He gave me a subtle thumbs up, and I realized he must have been part of this plan. Walking down the aisle ahead of Madison, feeling my mother's glare from the front row, was both terrifying and exhilarating. I held my head high, focusing on Ryan's pleased smile as he saw me approaching. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Madison and Ryan had written their own vows, promises of partnership and support that brought tears to my eyes. When they were pronounced husband and wife, I cheered along with everyone else, genuinely happy for my sister despite the complicated journey to this moment. At the reception, I was seated at the head table, another change to the original arrangements. My mother maintained her composure throughout dinner, though she pointedly directed her conversation to everyone except me. When it came time for toasts, I rose with unexpected confidence. For those who don't know, I'm Sophia, Madison's sister, I began. And there was a time recently when I thought I might not be here today. A murmur ran through the crowd. My mother's posture stiffened. But that's not a sad story. I continued smoothly. It's actually a story about the incredible strength of sisterhood. About how even when life gets complicated, the bond between sisters can overcome any obstacle. I shared childhood memories of Madison, spoke of her kindness and creativity, her perfect match in Ryan, and my joy at seeing her so happy. I carefully avoided any hint of the recent conflict, focusing instead on love and reconciliation. By the end, even my mother's expression had softened slightly. As Madison hugged me after the toast, she whispered, "Thank you for taking the high road." "It's your day," I whispered back. "Nothing else matters." And in that moment, watching my sister radiant with happiness, I realized it was true. The pain of the past months faded in the face of this renewed connection. We had found our way back to each other despite our mother's interference, and that victory was sweeter than any revenge could have been. The weeks following Madison's wedding brought significant changes to our family dynamics. My sister and Ryan left for a 2-week honeymoon in Italy, during which Madison texted me daily with photos and updates, a marked contrast to the months of silence we'd endured. When they returned, our relationship continued to strengthen. We resumed our weekly sister dinners, now sometimes including Ryan. During one such evening, Madison brought up our mother. "She's been calling every day," Madison sighed. "Always with some crisis or complaint." "How are you handling it?" I asked carefully. "Differently," she replied with a small smile. "I've started setting boundaries. Not answering every call. Limiting conversations to 20 minutes. Ryan's been really supportive." "That's brave," I said. "I know how hard it is to stand up to her." My own relationship with our parents remained strained. Dad made efforts to connect independently, suggesting lunch dates or calling just to chat. These tentative steps toward a healthier relationship were welcome, though I remained cautious. Mom, however, alternated between cold formality and attempts to rewrite history. "I never meant to exclude you," she claimed during one tense family dinner. "There was simply a misunderstanding about your interest in attending." Rather than arguing, I began responding with calm clarity. "That's not what happened, Mom, and we both know it. I'm here now because I love Madison and Dad, and I'm working on forgiving you. These interactions were draining, but each time I stood my ground, I felt stronger. I established clear boundaries, limiting one-on-one time with her, ending conversations when they became manipulative, refusing to engage with her attempts to drive wedges between Madison and me. "I'm proud of you," Natalie told me after I declined my mother's guilt-inducing invitation to a family event that conflicted with an important work commitment. "A year ago, you would have canceled your work thing and been miserable the entire time." My friendship with Natalie deepened through this period. She had been my rock during the darkest moments, and that support created a bond that felt more like family than friendship. "You're the sister I got to choose," I told her on her birthday, only half joking. Ryan's family, too, became an unexpected source of support. His parents, warm and straightforward people, welcomed me into their home and celebrations without the undercurrents of competition or manipulation I'd grown up with. "We're glad Madison has you," Ryan's mother told me during their first post-honeymoon dinner. "Family is everything, but it shouldn't hurt this much." These connections, with Natalie, with Ryan's family, with colleagues who had supported me through the difficult months, formed a chosen family that supplemented my complicated biological one. For Thanksgiving, rather than subjecting ourselves to a tense meal at our parents' house, Madison, Ryan, and I hosted a Friendsgiving that included Natalie, Jack, several of Ryan's friends, and my colleague Lauren. The relaxed laughter and genuine warmth of that gathering showed me what family celebrations should feel like. Professionally, the experience transformed my approach to wedding planning. I became more attuned to family dynamics in my client consultations, gently helping brides navigate complicated relationships without inserting my own story. When one client tearfully confessed that her mother and sister weren't speaking and refused to be in the same room, I was able to offer both practical solutions and emotional support from a place of genuine understanding. "Family conflicts don't disappear for weddings," I told her. "Sometimes they intensify. But this is still your day, and there are ways to manage the situation with grace." This new perspective led me to start a monthly support group for people navigating family estrangement or conflict, particularly around milestone events. What began as 4 people sharing coffee and stories grew to a community of 15 regular attendees. Some were excluded from family weddings. Others were planning their own celebrations while managing toxic relationships. "You've created something really special here," one participant told me after sharing her success at establishing boundaries with her controlling father. "I don't feel crazy or alone anymore." 6 months after Madison's wedding, I was having coffee with her when she brought up our mother again. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how she's been manipulating us against each other for years," she said hesitantly. "I've started remembering other instances, things I didn't recognize at the time." "It's a painful realization," I acknowledged. Madison nodded. "The thing is, I don't want to cut her out completely. She's still our mother. But I can't unsee the pattern now. How do you handle it?" The question made me reflect on my own journey. "I'm still figuring it out," I admitted. "But I think forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing the same behaviors to continue. It means accepting what happened while protecting yourself from future harm." "Is that what you're doing? Forgiving her?" "I'm trying," I said honestly. "Some days are easier than others. But I've realized that holding on to anger only hurts me in the end. The real freedom comes from breaking the patterns, not from punishing her." Madison reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner." "We both missed it," I assured her. "What matters is that we found our way back to each other." As we finished our coffee, I realized how much had changed in a year. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something else. Wisdom, perhaps, or resilience. The experience had forced me to examine family patterns I'd normalized for decades, to establish healthier boundaries, and to value authentic relationships over obligatory ones. Most importantly, it had taught me that my worth wasn't determined by my mother's approval or even by my role in my family. It came from within, from the connections I chose to nurture, and from the life I was building on my own terms. On the first anniversary of that devastating family dinner where I'd been told I wasn't welcome at the wedding, I took myself to a nice restaurant, ordered champagne, and toasted my own journey. Not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the difficult lessons and the strength I'd found in the aftermath. The exclusion that once broke my heart had ultimately led to inclusion in more meaningful ways, in a community of supportive friends, in a healthier relationship with my sister, in a growing ability to help others navigate similar pain. As I sipped my champagne, I thought about all the people watching this story who might be struggling with their own family conflicts. If you've ever been excluded, diminished, or manipulated by someone who should have loved you unconditionally, please know that your worth isn't defined by their limitations. Family should be a source of love, not pain, and sometimes the family we choose matters more than the family we're born into. Have you ever experienced family manipulation or been excluded from an important event? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Thank you for letting me share my journey with you, and remember, you deserve to be valued, included, and loved for exactly who you are.